When my girlfriend got drunk and mocked me about having other options, I revealed my backup plan that left her speechless and no longer amused. Hey Reddit, my name is Derek, and I'm 30 years old. I work as a heavy equipment operator with a solid union job that comes with great benefits and has left me completely debt-free. It might not sound glamorous to most people, but I can position a 400-ton load with the precision of a surgeon, moving massive steel beams 70 stories up while dealing with crosswinds that would make even experienced pilots nervous. The work pays the bills well and keeps me current on my truck payments, especially with all the overtime opportunities available. I've always preferred keeping my life simple, organized, and completely drama-free. Madison was the complete opposite of everything I valued. She was 27 years old and looked like she could be the cousin of every Instagram influencer you've ever seen. She worked part-time at this boutique called Moon and Stars, where her main job seemed to be selling overpriced candles to suburban moms who were clearly going through their own midlife crises. Her monthly income was about as consistent as Florida weather. Sometimes it was decent, but more often than not, it was just disappointment mixed with endless excuses about slow retail seasons and economic downturns that somehow only affected her workplace. The rest of Madison's time was dedicated to what she called content creation, which is basically millennial speak for standing in good lighting and talking about absolutely nothing while holding products she didn't pay for. Her follower count had been stuck at the exact same number for 3 straight years, but she kept treating her social media presence like she was just one viral video away from me being able to retire my heavy equipment forever. She would spend hours every day setting up ring lights and filming herself applying lip gloss, all while talking about authentic living and finding your true purpose in life. We had been together for 4 years total and engaged for the last 10 months of that relationship, which looking back now was definitely a big mistake, but it is what it is. The engagement ring had cost me some serious money. It was a 2.5 carat princess cut from a legitimate jewelry store, and naturally she had picked it out herself. According to her very specific requirements, it had to be at least 2 carats because anything smaller would be embarrassing in photos and wouldn't photograph well for her social media posts. Our wedding was scheduled for October 20th at some expensive country club venue that charged an absolutely crazy amount of money per plate. All the deposits had been paid, and we had the whole 9 yards planned out. The first year of our relationship was actually really good. Madison was sweet and funny, and she had this amazing way of making even mundane activities like grocery shopping feel like some kind of adventure. She would put on this fake innocent voice whenever she wanted something, batting her eyelashes like she was auditioning for an old sitcom. Back then, that routine actually worked on me, and I found it endearing rather than manipulative. She would cook occasionally during those early days, and she actually seemed genuinely interested in hearing my work stories when I came home from the job site. We would binge-watch entire seasons of shows together, spending lazy weekends just enjoying each other's company. But once that engagement ring hit her finger, something fundamental shifted in our relationship dynamic. Suddenly, she transformed into this bride-to-be persona, and apparently that new identity meant her only real job was planning our wedding while I was expected to fund literally everything else in our lives. Madison joined every single wedding-related group she could find online and subscribed to multiple bridal magazines that started cluttering up our coffee table. She began treating Pinterest like it was her full-time career, spending hours every day scrolling through wedding inspiration boards and saving ideas for things we couldn't afford. Her main contribution to our relationship became posting Instagram stories about having a real man and updating her bio to call herself Future Mrs. Thompson, all while I was covering every single expense that kept her princess lifestyle afloat. The financial breakdown was pretty straightforward, and I was handling all of it. Rent was between $100 and $900 for our 2-bedroom apartment, depending on various fees and charges. Utilities ran anywhere from $250 to $350 per month. Groceries cost us between $450 and $550 monthly. Car insurance was $320 for both of us combined since she was on my policy. Our phone bills came to $180 for the family plan that included both our devices. Then there were all the wedding expenses and basically everything else that kept her comfortable lifestyle running smoothly. Madison had developed this particularly annoying move where she would promise to send me money later for dinner dates and shopping trips. A $95 steak dinner would become, "Oops, I forgot to send you that money back." A $140 shopping trip would turn into, "I'll get you back next week, I promise." Eventually later just became, "Oops, I forgot." And then it simply became the normal expectation. I was paying for absolutely everything, while she collected likes and comments on photos of the life that I was completely funding. To give credit where it was due, Madison did keep our apartment clean during the early stages of our relationship. She always hyped me up in front of her friends, making me sound like some kind of hero for having a steady job and being responsible. She seemed to know exactly when to butter me up after I'd had a particularly rough day on the job site. I would come home completely exhausted from operating heavy equipment in 100-degree heat for 10 hours straight, and she would have a cold drink waiting for me. She would actually sit down and listen to me vent about incompetent ground crews or weather delays that had made my day a living hell. But even during those better times, red flags were popping up like some kind of carnival game that I was somehow losing. Madison would constantly trash talk her own friends behind their backs, especially the ones who had boyfriends with what she considered regular jobs. She would scroll through social media and make comments like, "Danny's guy looks like he stocks shelves at a hardware store," while I'm literally operating heavy machinery 50 stories up in the air, coordinating with engineers and making split-second decisions that could actually kill someone if I mess up. But apparently, my job was somehow different because I wore a hard hat instead of a suit to work every day. Her family situation was the absolute peak of suburban dysfunction, and I should have seen it as a preview of what I was getting myself into. Her mom, Patricia, treated Madison like she was some kind of displaced royalty who had been unfairly exiled from her rightful throne. Patricia was constantly gushing about our upcoming wedding and asking inappropriate questions about when we were going to start having kids. She would drop not-so-subtle hints about how we should be thinking about upgrading to a bigger house soon. Patricia had this annoying habit of cornering me at family dinners and launching into these 25-minute monologues about how Madison deserved only the best things in life and how a real man always provides for his family without complaint. Her dad seemed cool enough, though. Robert was a quiet HVAC guy who probably just wanted to make it to retirement without having a stroke from all the family drama. He would nod along politely to whatever Patricia was saying while you could see him mentally calculating how many years he had left before he could achieve escape velocity from the whole situation. At least Robert appreciated that I had a solid trade and understood the value of honest work. We would talk shop about construction projects and building codes when we got the chance. He would give me these knowing looks across the dinner table like he completely understood what I was dealing with on a daily basis. Madison's brother Blake was the only one in that entire family who had any common sense, though. He's a mechanic who runs his own shop, and he's genuinely a good dude who works hard for his money. Blake had been dropping subtle warnings about Madison's behavior pretty much since we first started dating. He would say things like, "Watch your wallet around her," with a laugh that wasn't really a laugh, especially after you put that ring on her finger. I definitely should have listened to his advice, but you know how it is when you're right in the middle of a situation. Sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. I wasn't completely miserable during this whole period, though. I had a plan that had been brewing in the back of my mind for a while. My buddy Tyler had been trying to get me to move in with him for months, offering me a room in his place and a chance to split expenses with someone who actually understood the concept of financial responsibility. Let's just say that plan got accelerated real quick when things finally came to a head. Thursday rolled around like any other typical workday. I came home from the job site completely covered in concrete dust and equipment grease, looking forward to nothing more than a hot shower and maybe catching up on some Netflix. We had been dealing with a particularly difficult steel placement project all week. A 45-story office building downtown where the architect had apparently thought that gravity was completely optional when designing the structure. I was absolutely exhausted. My back was killing me from operating equipment all day, and I just wanted to decompress and relax for a few hours. Instead of the peaceful evening I was hoping for, I walked straight into Hurricane Madison operating at full strength. She was pacing around our living room like a caged animal, phone clutched in her hand, with wedding magazines scattered across the entire coffee table. She had her laptop open with what looked like 19 different browser tabs showing various destination wedding venues. The energy in the room was chaotic and frantic, and I could immediately tell that something was about to go very wrong. "We're going to Miami," she announced without even bothering to look up from her phone screen. "What?" I asked, genuinely confused about what she was talking about. "My cousin's wedding. It's in Miami. 6 days total. I already RSVP'd for both of us without asking. It'll be perfect for content creation. You know, an engaged couple attending a destination wedding. The photo opportunities will be incredible." She was already mentally planning her Instagram posts and calculating how many outfit changes she would need for the trip. I stood there in the doorway, still in my work clothes, trying to process this information that was being delivered to me like a weather forecast. When exactly is this supposed to happen? "Next month. I actually already booked our flights. Well, I put them on hold. You need to pay for them by tomorrow, though." She said this with the same casual tone she might use to ask me to grab milk from the store. The completely nonchalant way she delivered this information, like she was informing me about something as mundane as the weather, made my left eye start twitching involuntarily. I had been putting in 65-hour weeks consistently just to keep up with all our wedding expenses and regular living costs. Now she wanted me to drop another $200 on someone else's party without any discussion or planning. Can I even get those days off work? This is pretty short notice for a construction project. You'll figure it out. You always do, she replied dismissively, already scrolling through resort photos on her phone, probably calculating how many different outfits she would need and how much new clothing she would have to buy for the trip. Madison, that's like $200 just thrown away for one weekend. We're already spending $45,000 on our own wedding. I gestured toward the pile of vendor contracts stacked on our kitchen counter, each one bearing my signature, my credit card number, and my financial future hanging in the balance. She finally looked up from her phone for the first time since I'd walked through the door, rolling her eyes in that exaggerated way that made me feel like I was being completely unreasonable for questioning her logic. Derek, it's one weekend. Don't be such a baby about it. We're engaged now. This is what couples do when they're planning a life together. Melissa and Josh went to 4 different destination weddings just last year alone. It's not about the weekend, Madison. It's about respect and communication. You can't just make major financial decisions for both of us and then expect me to fund them without any discussion. I could feel my blood pressure rising as this conversation followed the exact same pattern that every single one of our arguments seemed to take. She would make elaborate plans. I would object to the cost or the lack of communication, and then she would somehow make me feel like I was being unreasonable for wanting to be included in decisions that affected my life. That's when she laughed. It was a full-throated, head-thrown-back laugh, like I had just told her that the earth was flat or that the moon landing was fake. Respect? Derek, what do you think? You're my only option here? I could have had an engagement ring from 4 other guys before you finally stepped up and did the right thing. She gestured at her phone like it was concrete proof of her overwhelming desirability and market value. Brad's been texting me for months trying to get back together. Tyler still slides into my DMs whenever he's feeling lonely. I have choices here, and I want you to remember that. The words hit me like a physical slap across the face. This was the same girl who hadn't paid for her own phone bill in 3 years, who was wearing an engagement ring that I'd gone into serious debt to purchase, and she was standing there acting like she was running auditions for my replacement. Definitely not, I said finally, trying to keep my voice as calm and level as possible. She nodded like my response had somehow proved her point perfectly. Exactly. So stop acting like I owe you explanations for every little thing. I'm an independent woman, and after we're married, you better remember that and respect my autonomy. This was coming from the same independent woman who had needed me to cover her half of the electric bill just last month, but hey, I guess that's just her living her truth and slaying her goals. She grabbed her purse, the $450 designer bag that I had bought her for her birthday, and slung it over her shoulder with dramatic flair that would have made a soap opera actress proud. I'm going to Harper's house to work on wedding stuff and figure out our timeline, figure out your attitude before I get back home. The door slammed behind her hard enough to rattle the picture frames hanging on our walls, frames that held photos of trips I had paid for, dinners I'd covered, and moments I had funded. I stood there looking around at the apartment that I had been paying for, filled with furniture and decorations that I had bought, surrounded by wedding magazines that I would never read, and I realized something important. This wasn't a loss that I needed to mourn. This was my get-out-of-jail-free card, and it was time to let her other options clock in for their shift. Now let me tell you more about my buddy Tyler, because he's going to become pretty important to this story. This guy has been my best friend since we were in 7th grade, back when we somehow convinced our substitute teacher that the class hamster was diabetic and needed emergency sugar packets to survive. Tyler is the kind of guy who can talk his way out of absolutely anything, has zero tolerance for relationship drama, and works as a welder making really good money in the process. He had this amazing 3-bedroom setup across town that I had been secretly envious of for months. The place came with a washer and dryer actually inside the unit, a balcony with a legitimate view of the city skyline, and parking that didn't require a degree in advanced mathematics just to figure out where you were allowed to leave your car. I had been dragging my feet about making any major changes because change is hard, and honestly, I'm pretty lazy when it comes to upheaval. But Madison had basically handed me all the motivation I needed on a silver platter. That night, after she stormed out, I sent Tyler a simple text message. Yo, I'm pulling the plug on this whole thing. You still want a roommate? His response came back almost immediately. Bro, I thought you'd never ask. Did she finally evolve into her final form, or what? She said you think you're my only option, and basically threatened to replace me if I don't fund her Miami vacation. LMAO, bro. She thinks she's the main character in her own Netflix series. When are we moving you in? This weekend. I'm going completely ghost mode. The wedding's officially canceled. Holy shit. That's like $42,000 worth of deposits going down the drain. Better than a lifetime of this bullshit. I'll be free. I'll stock the fridge with pizza rolls and emotional detachment. Tyler understood the assignment perfectly. He had been watching this train wreck unfold for 4 years, occasionally dropping hints that I was basically dating a financial vampire. The man had more patience than I gave him credit for, and he'd been waiting for this moment probably longer than I had. Friday morning came, and Madison was scheduled to be at her boutique job. The store opened at 11 a.m., which meant she would be gone until at least 4 p.m., giving me a solid 5-hour window to execute what I was already calling Operation Financial Independence in my head. It was the perfect opportunity to make my escape without having to deal with any dramatic confrontations or attempts to guilt me into changing my mind. The first order of business was dealing with her phone situation. She had been on my family plan for 3 years because, according to her, it was cheaper to bundle everything together. Yeah, it was definitely cheaper, for her. I logged into my Verizon account and deleted her line like I was clearing my browser history before a job interview. I felt that $95 monthly weight lift off my shoulders immediately, and it was honestly one of the most satisfying clicks I'd ever made. Next up were all the streaming services that had somehow become ours over the years. Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Spotify Premium, all of them were technically mine since they were all linked to my credit card and email address. I changed every single password and removed her profile from each account. She had been the primary user on most of these services anyway, binge-watching reality TV shows while I was out making the money that paid for her entertainment. Then I called her gym, Planet Fitness on Oakwood Boulevard. She had been a member there for 10 months and had actually used the facility exactly twice, both times just to film herself doing yoga poses for Instagram stories about Self-Care Sunday and investing in my health journey. The membership was $90.99 a month for the premium package because she absolutely needed access to the massage chairs and tanning booths. I canceled that membership and felt another financial burden disappear. Car insurance was the next item on my list. She had been on my policy for years because, according to her, dealing with insurance companies gave her severe anxiety. Well, growing up and handling adult responsibilities gives everyone anxiety, sweetheart, but that's called being a functional human being. I removed her from my State Farm policy and watched my monthly premium drop by $170. Turns out that insuring a 24-year-old with a speeding ticket and a history of minor fender benders is pretty expensive. Who could have possibly seen that coming? Then came the big task, canceling our entire wedding. I spent the entire morning on the phone with various vendors, armed with a notebook, and the kind of grim determination that's usually reserved for doing taxes or dealing with the DMV. I had to try to recover whatever money I could from this financial disaster. The venue was my first call, Sunset Hills Country Club, where we had put down a $9,200 deposit that was supposedly non-refundable, but I figured I had to at least try to get something back. The event coordinator, Michelle, actually sounded relieved when I called to cancel. Honestly, Mr. Thompson, you're the 4th cancellation we've had this month. The economy has everyone nervous about big expenses. While I couldn't get a refund on the deposit, they did waive the remaining balance we would have owed, which saved me thousands. The catering came next. Giuseppe's Fine Dining, where we had put down a $13,500 deposit for 160 guests. The owner was surprisingly cool about the whole situation. Brother, you're dodging a bullet here. I've seen too many guys go broke trying to impress people who don't even like them. He kept $4,500 for administrative costs and food orders that had already been placed, but he refunded the rest, which was better than I had expected. The DJ was actually pretty easy to deal with. He was a local guy who kept $600 for his time and planning, but refunded $400 without any hassle. He actually thanked me for being honest and calling him directly instead of just ghosting him like some people apparently do. The photographer, Veronica, kept $200 out of our $3,800 deposit, but seemed genuinely happy to get her October Saturday back for other bookings. The florist was an absolute nightmare, though. Some bougie place called Bloom and Petals kept every single penny of our $3,100 deposit, claiming they had already ordered specialized flowers and started the design process. It was obviously a total scam, but I didn't have the energy or time to fight them over it when I had so many other things to handle. Most of the deposits were completely non-refundable, which I had expected going into this process, but I managed to get back about $9,600 total. Every single phone call felt like lifting heavy weights off my chest, and even though I was losing money, it was still significantly cheaper than what a divorce would have cost me down the road. Plus, I was getting my freedom back, which was absolutely priceless. The wedding dress situation turned out to be the best part of this entire cancellation process. Madison had put the dress on layaway at David's Bridal, a two $400 monstrosity covered with enough beading and sequins to outfit a small army for battle. She had been making minimum monthly payments while I was expected to cover the remaining balance when it came time to pick up the dress. I called David's Bridal, explained the situation honestly, and got a full refund since she had never actually taken possession of the dress. $3.5 grand went right back into my pocket just like that. Before I started packing up my stuff to move out, I decided to do something that was definitely petty, but felt absolutely necessary for my own closure. I printed out a high-resolution photo of myself holding a dry erase board with "Save the date," never written across it in bold letters. I replaced the main mirror in her elaborate vanity setup with this picture, positioning it so that her ring light would frame it perfectly when she turned on her equipment for her next content creation session. Then I took the engagement ring. It was sitting in its little velvet box on the dresser, probably worth more than my truck, and definitely representing months of overtime work and financial sacrifice. I wasn't planning to pawn it or anything like that. That would have been tacky and beneath me. But it was mine, bought with my hard-earned money, and she wasn't getting some kind of consolation prize for being absolutely terrible at maintaining a healthy relationship. By lunchtime, I had moved everything that belonged to me out of that apartment. The 80-inch Samsung TV that I had bought with my own money, my PlayStation 5 with my complete game library, my Craftsman tool set that I had built up over years of working construction, my home office desk where I handled all our finances, and the $900 Keurig coffee machine that she had always referred to as ours, even though I was the one who had paid for it. I left behind all her Amazon delivery boxes that she consistently refused to break down and recycle, that weird feather lamp that she claimed gave her creative energy for her content creation, and approximately 45 wedding magazines that were now basically expensive toilet paper. Everything that remained in that apartment was either hers or something I was happy to never see again. As one final touch before I walked out the door forever, I pulled out something I had been keeping for exactly this kind of moment. I had been keeping receipts. Not just mental notes, but actual physical receipts, screenshots of every Venmo payment, records of every bill I had covered, documentation of every wedding expense, and evidence of every single time she had promised to pay me back for something. 4 years of complete financial martyrdom, all documented like I was preparing for an audit with the IRS. The folder was 3 inches thick and represented thousands of dollars in unreciprocated expenses. Saturday morning arrived, and I dropped my last box off at Tyler's place. He helped me carry it up the stairs to what was now going to be my new home, handed me a cold Bud Light, and said with perfect deadpan delivery, "So how does it feel to finally escape the financial Venus flytrap?" We fist-bumped in celebration of my newfound freedom, and then he walked into the living room and flopped down on the couch with the kind of casual comfort that only comes from being in your own space. He let out a loud, completely shameless fart that would have made a long-haul trucker proud, and I realized that this was exactly the kind of drama-free environment I had been missing for years. "She's going to lose her absolute mind when she finds out what happened," Tyler said while we were setting up my PlayStation in the entertainment center. "The wedding dress shop doesn't exactly offer payment plans for dresses that don't exist anymore." We fired up the PlayStation and dove straight into some Call of Duty, and between matches, Tyler looked over at me and said, "Now that you're finally free from that disaster, can we both agree that your ex-fiancée looked like she straightened her hair with a waffle iron?" I almost choked on my drink laughing because the accuracy of that description was absolutely perfect. That's the thing nobody ever tells you about finding real peace in your life. Sometimes it doesn't come from meditation retreats or self-help books or therapy sessions. Sometimes it's just a cold drink, a controller in your hands, and your best friend roasting your terrible ex while somewhere across town, a grown woman is probably screaming at her Wi-Fi router and wondering why David's Bridal is suddenly asking for payment in full. Saturday night arrived right on schedule, and my phone started blowing up with notifications. Except it wasn't Madison's number showing up on my screen. It was Blake's number, her brother being used as some kind of communication proxy, like he was customer service for a completely dysfunctional relationship. The poor guy was probably sitting in his garage trying to work on a transmission while his sister was having a complete meltdown in the kitchen. The messages came in like rapid-fire artillery, one after another. "Netflix isn't working." "WTF, is my phone turned off?" "Where's the TV?" The wedding venue called Mom crying. "You canceled our wedding without telling me? I swear to God, Derek, you better come back home right now. I'm not paying for this apartment by myself. You crazy piece of shit, I'm calling the police. Where is my engagement ring? Answer me right now or I'm breaking your PS5. You forgot to leave the phone charger." Each message was more completely unhinged than the last one, and I was genuinely laughing at every single escalating threat and demand. But before I could even think about how to respond to this barrage of insanity, Tyler snatched my phone right out of my hands like it owed him money. He opened up the camera app, flipped it to selfie mode, and sent back a beautiful high-definition photo of himself, giving the middle finger while holding a hot pocket in his other hand. Then he typed underneath the picture, "Tell your landlord your options will be paying rent this month. Weddings off. Management." I was absolutely wheezing with laughter at Tyler's response. This is exactly why this guy has been my best friend for 16 years. He has absolutely zero tolerance for drama and the perfect sense of humor to handle situations like this. About 15 minutes later, another text came through my phone. But this time it was actually from Blake himself instead of being relayed through him. "Bro, I don't even know how you dated her crazy ass for that long. My condolences on your loss, but honestly, you dodged a bullet. She's pacing around the kitchen right now like she's about to star in her own true crime documentary. Mom's having a complete breakdown about having to tell the extended family that the wedding is canceled." I texted back, "Respect to you for surviving in the same house with all this chaos for all these years." She keeps asking where the engagement ring is. I told her you probably returned it to Mordor where it belongs. Blake had always had a twisted sense of humor, and I genuinely appreciated that about him. He understood exactly how ridiculous this whole situation was. Dad's hiding out in the garage pretending to organize his tools. Mom's calling literally everyone in our family tree to break the news. Madison's in full victim mode, acting like this is something that happened to her instead of something she caused. It's like watching a nature documentary about suburban dysfunction. That night, I decided to take some practical precautions to protect myself from any further attempts at manipulation or contact. I changed our Wi-Fi password to Independent Woman07 as a little inside joke that only I would appreciate. I removed her access from all our shared accounts, canceled her Amazon Prime access, and made sure she couldn't use the Fire Stick to stream her way back into some kind of financial dependence on me. Then, and I absolutely shit you not, Madison posted something on Instagram that night that was so perfectly ridiculous it could have been written by a team of comedy writers. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to lose a man to find yourself. I'm finally free to discover who I really am. Not all fairy tales have happy endings, but mine is just beginning. Healing Sawart single, Dart new chapter or blessed." The photo was her sitting on the couch that I had bought, wrapped in the blanket that I had paid for, holding a wine glass while crying, but using a beauty filter that made her tears look like sparkling diamonds. She had somehow managed to turn our canceled wedding into what looked like a trailer for a Netflix documentary about suburban sadness and millennial heartbreak. The comment section was exactly what you would expect from social media. It was filled with her friends posting supportive messages like, "You're better off without him, queen," and "His loss, babe," and "You deserve so much better," without knowing any of the actual details about what had happened or why our relationship had ended. It was just the classic social media echo chamber operating at its finest, with people offering support based on a carefully curated version of events. But here's where the story gets really interesting, because this is when Brittany enters the picture. Now, Brittany was one of those girls who hovers around every couple like a vulture circling overhead, never too close to cause obvious problems, but never too far away to miss an opportunity. She was always ready with supportive comments on my social media posts, and had this "you deserve better" energy whenever Madison wasn't around to hear it. It was classic pick-me behavior combined with strategic positioning, just waiting for the right moment to make her move. Monday afternoon, I got a direct message from Brittany that started off innocently enough. "Hey Derek, I don't want to cause any drama or get involved in things that aren't my business, but I thought you deserved to know the truth about some things. Madison's been awful to you for a really long time, and some of us in the friend group have seen it happening. I'm just sorry it took this long for you to get away from that situation. You honestly dodged a bullet by canceling that wedding." Then she dropped what felt like an atomic bomb right into my DMs. She sent me screenshots from their group chat that showed Madison's true feelings about our relationship and her real attitude toward me. The messages were absolutely brutal. "Derek is so easy to manipulate, LOL. Wedding planning is just the perfect excuse to buy stuff I want. He thinks he's my fiancé, but he's really just my ATM with a ring attached. I've got 4 guys lined up for after the honeymoon anyway. He's so pathetic, he pays for everything and actually thinks I'm grateful, LOL. Can't wait to get his last name and half his stuff in the divorce." But the real kicker, the thing that made my blood boil, was the screenshots of Madison texting some dude named Brandon. These weren't just friendly conversations. They were full-on sexting sessions where she was talking complete trash about me and making plans to visit him while I was outside in the driveway fixing her car battery. She was literally cheating on me emotionally and probably physically while simultaneously planning our wedding. She was probably using our shared Google Calendar to schedule her affairs around my work schedule. Brittany followed up with another message. I always knew you were the real one in that relationship. If you ever want to talk about everything that happened or just hang out sometime, I'm here for you. You deserve so much better than what she put you through. I waited exactly 4 minutes, then replied, I appreciate you sending me this information. Honestly, you're the only one in that whole friend group who seemed to have any common sense about what was actually going on in that circus of a relationship. She sent back a heart emoji almost immediately. Then I sent one more message. Too bad loyalty is only useful after the ship has already sunk. Tell the others I said thanks for the entertainment value. Peace. I blocked her immediately after sending that. Look, I'm not bitter about the whole situation, but I'm definitely allergic to snakes trying to wear empathy like it's some kind of designer cologne. Tyler saw the whole exchange happen and just shook his head with disgust. Damn! That girl's got the emotional depth of a puddle in the desert. For the next 4 weeks, I enjoyed blissful silence. I was working full days on the construction site, hitting the gym regularly with Tyler, and sleeping like a man who no longer had to worry about someone else's constant financial crises. I had picked up some overtime shifts to build up my savings account, and life was genuinely good in that simple, drama-free way that makes you appreciate basic peace and quiet. Then I got a text message from an unknown number that immediately made me start laughing. Derek, it's Madison. I'm pregnant. We need to talk about getting the wedding back on track. I stared at that message for a full 15 seconds, processing what I was reading, and then I started laughing out loud. I texted back, Congratulations. Who's the father? Her response came back immediately. Are you kidding me right now? It's yours, obviously. I'm 9 weeks along. We need to get married before I start showing. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I am absolutely excellent at basic math and keeping track of timelines. According to my very accurate calculations, we hadn't done anything intimate since February, and it was now June. Either she was carrying the longest pregnancy in human history, or she thought I was stupid enough to fall for this obviously desperate attempt at manipulation. We had barely been in the same room together for the last month of our relationship, let alone sharing the same bed. 9 weeks? We broke up over a month ago. We haven't had sex since February, I texted back. Well, maybe I'm 7 weeks along then. The doctor said the dates can be confusing sometimes, she replied, already backpedaling. Still no, try again. Okay, fine, maybe it's 5 weeks. The point is we need to have a small ceremony, just immediate family members. I sat there watching this woman try to manipulate the basic laws of time and biology through text messages. It was like watching someone try to convince me that gravity was optional, or that the sky was actually green. Madison, physics doesn't bend just because you're desperate, I replied. So I decided to call her directly. She picked up on the very first ring, and her voice was all soft and trembling, like she was auditioning for a soap opera about teenage pregnancy and family drama. Derek, I know we had our problems and said some things we didn't mean, but this changes everything between us. We created a life together. Don't you want to do the right thing here? Madison, whose baby is it really? I asked directly. She snapped back into the defensive mode faster than a mousetrap closing. I told you it's yours. I would never cheat on you. We're supposed to be married. This is what people do when they love each other. It was time to play my ace card. Interesting. So Brandon doesn't exist then? The silence on the other end of the phone was so long that I thought the call had dropped. I could hear her breathing getting shallow and rapid. Then who's Brandon? She finally asked. It wasn't even a good lie. It was just pure panic disguised as confusion. Brandon, your side piece for the past year. The one you've been sexting while I was planning our wedding. The one you were making plans to visit while I was outside fixing your flat tire. I could hear her breathing getting even more labored on the other end of the phone. More silence stretched between us as I could practically hear her brain short-circuiting in real time. I don't know what you're talking about, she said weakly. Screenshots don't lie, Madison. Your girl Brittany flipped on you faster than a politician during election season. She showed me everything, every conversation, every lie, every plan you made behind my back. That's when she completely lost it and went into full meltdown mode. What do you mean, Brittany? Complete meltdown time. That bitch, Derek, that snake is just jealous and bitter. She kept screaming about Brittany being a fake friend, calling her a jealous snake, a liar, and several other things that probably aren't in any dictionary. She went into full banshee mode, and I had to hold the phone away from my ear because she was literally shrieking. I hung up while she was mid-screech, right in the middle of one of her rants about betrayal and fake friends. 2 hours later, she called me back with a completely different approach this time. Gone was the screaming and hysteria, replaced by a trembling voice and fake vulnerability that sounded like she was performing in some kind of dramatic theater production. Okay, the baby might be yours. I did the math wrong before because I was emotional and confused. We can still have a small wedding ceremony. I'll even pay for half of everything this time. You did math wrong on your own pregnancy? I asked, genuinely amazed at her audacity. I was emotional and scared. Look, I know you canceled everything we had planned, but we can still make this work between us. Vegas maybe, or something small and intimate. So now she was doubling down on the lie while simultaneously admitting that she had been lying the entire time. The mental gymnastics she was performing were genuinely impressive to witness. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You cheated on me, got pregnant by another dude, and now you're trying to rush me into marriage because Brandon bailed on you when things got real? You're confusing me with someone else. I'm not confusing you with anyone. You're just terrible at lying consistently. I'm not lying. I love you and I want to marry you. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, and yes, Brandon ghosted me when I told him about the pregnancy. Please, Derek. Cool. Then take a paternity test to prove it's mine. I will, she said immediately. Great, don't call me until you have the results in your hands. I hung up again, and guess what? She never called back with any test results. Funny how that works when people are actually telling the truth. A couple of weeks passed by peacefully, and I was settling into my new routine perfectly. Work, gym, hanging out with Tyler, and actually having money left in my bank account at the end of each month. Life was genuinely good in that simple, drama-free way that makes you appreciate basic peace and quiet in your daily existence. I had started picking up some side work on weekends, small equipment jobs that paid cash and helped me build up my savings account even faster. My financial situation was looking healthier than it had in years. Then Blake called me with an update from what he called Ground Zero, the family home where all the chaos was still unfolding. According to him, Madison had gotten evicted from our old apartment after confidently telling the landlord that I had simply forgotten to pay the rent and would be back to handle it soon. When I never showed up and the rent never got paid, she found herself homeless with nowhere to go. She had moved back in with her parents, dragging Brandon along for the ride. Yeah, Brandon, the same Brandon who had supposedly ghosted her when she told him about the pregnancy. Turns out she had guilt-tripped him incredibly hard, sending him what Blake described as novels about how I had abandoned her during her pregnancy, how she needed a real man to step up and take responsibility, and how I had cruelly left her at the altar and destroyed all her dreams of happiness. Brandon, apparently lacking both brain cells and any sense of self-respect, had bought her entire sob story completely. He showed up at her parents' house with a duffel bag, ready to play house and be the hero in her manufactured drama. Blake told me that at family dinners, Brandon would try to explain to everyone how he was growing into his responsibility and that real men own their mistakes. The guy was 25 years old, worked at a tire shop, and drove a 2013 Honda Civic with a bad muffler that sounded like a dying lawnmower. Meanwhile, Madison was posting cryptic Facebook statuses next to blurry ultrasound photos, talking about new beginnings and unexpected blessings, and everything happens for a reason. The best part? Brandon had absolutely no idea about the actual timeline of events. He genuinely thought that I had left her in the middle of her pregnancy, that I had abandoned my own child and canceled our wedding out of pure spite and cruelty. Madison had spun the whole situation like it was a Lifetime movie about heartbreak, betrayal, and redemption. Blake told me he was just sitting back and watching it all unfold like it was some kind of nature documentary about suburban dysfunction. I'm just here for the explosion, he told me with obvious amusement in his voice. Well, he didn't have to wait very long for that explosion to happen. That Saturday, Tyler and I were having what I would describe as the perfect day. We had just finished watching some UFC fights. The main event was this incredible heavyweight brawl that ended with both guys unconscious on the canvas at the same time. We had ordered burritos from this amazing place down the street. The apartment was clean, and life was genuinely good. I was in the middle of telling Tyler about this new job site where we're building a 55-story residential tower when someone started pounding on the front door like they had a warrant and a personal grudge against the wood. Tyler and I looked at each other with that, "oh shit, here we go" expression. I opened the door, and there they were in all their misguided glory. Brandon was standing there, puffed up like he had been inflated with testosterone and stupidity, clearly trying to look intimidating. Madison was positioned behind him with her arms crossed, visibly pregnant and wearing full makeup like she was about to film some kind of courtroom drama for daytime television. Brandon stepped forward like he was about to deliver a monologue from a bad action movie. You think you can abandon a pregnant woman and just walk away without any consequences? You left her at the altar, man. I'm here to teach you a lesson, man to man. It was like watching someone who had clearly watched a YouTube video titled How to Become Alpha in 3 Easy Steps and decided this was his moment to put those lessons into practice. Behind him, Madison actually started clapping. I'm not exaggerating or being dramatic. She was literally clapping like he had just delivered the greatest punchline in comedy club history. Show him, babe. Show him what a real man does when someone disrespects his woman. I stood there watching this entire performance, trying my absolute hardest not to burst out laughing at the sheer ridiculousness of the situation. Brandon looked like he had spent serious time in the gym building up his arms and chest, but he had clearly never been in an actual fight in his life. He had big arms but a soft middle, and his eyes didn't match the aggressive energy that was coming out of his mouth. He was one of those guys who could probably bench press 350 pounds but had never thrown a punch outside of a video game. He charged at me without saying anything else, just launched himself forward like he thought I would stand there and let him tackle me to the ground. But I've been working construction for 12 years dealing with equipment malfunctions and emergency situations where a split-second delay can literally mean the difference between life and death. Quick reflexes and situational awareness come with the territory when you're operating heavy machinery. I stepped aside and grabbed his shirt mid-lunge, using his own momentum to send him face first into the concrete walkway outside my door. It wasn't even really a fight. It was just basic physics and poor decision-making meeting each other at high speed. He hit the ground hard, making a sound like a deflating balloon mixed with wounded pride. Blood started trickling from his nose immediately, and I could hear him whimpering about his ribs being hurt. Madison gasped like this was some shocking plot twist in a movie, instead of the completely natural result of someone attacking another person on their own property. Then she snapped, her eyes going wild and her voice hitting frequencies that could probably shatter glass. She bolted toward my truck with something metallic clutched in her hand. It looked like either a key or maybe a screwdriver. Before I could react to Madison's charge toward my truck, Tyler appeared out of nowhere like he had been shot out of a cannon. He was still chewing his burrito, but he grabbed her by the elbow and yanked her away from my vehicle with reflexes that I didn't even know he possessed. "Ma'am, this is a Ford," he said while still mid-chew, "not your emotional support punching bag." "Get the hell out of my way, Tyler. Don't get between us," Madison screeched, trying to twist away from his grip. "Lady, are you naturally that stupid, or do you have to practice sometimes?" Tyler replied with perfect, deadpan delivery. She twisted and screeched like a banshee, trying desperately to break free from Tyler's grip. But Tyler has that deceptively strong grip that comes from years of welding and heavy lifting. There was no way she was getting loose without him letting her go. Brandon stumbled to his feet, his ego completely deflated and his eyes watering from his concrete facial treatment. I stepped forward, calm as a still lake, and pointed directly at both of them. "Take your pregnant disaster and get off my property before I call the cops and make this everyone's problem." Brandon didn't say a single word in response. He just nodded once and helped Madison shuffle toward his beat-up Honda Civic like they were leaving the scene of a crime they had just committed. His muffler was so loud it sounded like a chainsaw having an asthma attack. Madison was still yelling as they drove off, but I couldn't make out any of the words over the sound of his exhaust system destroying the peaceful neighborhood atmosphere. Tyler and I stood there for a minute, watching them disappear down the street. Then he wiped his hands on his hoodie and said with perfect timing, "I bet that kid's first word is going to be unstable." About an hour later, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree with notifications. It was Patricia, Madison's mom, in full meltdown mode. She was sending me walls of text about how I had supposedly assaulted a pregnant woman, broken Brandon's ribs, and was definitely going to jail for this violent attack. There was also something about how I had ruined her daughter's wedding dreams and destroyed the family's reputation in the community. I didn't respond to any of her messages. I just took screenshots of everything and called my lawyer to document the harassment. First thing Monday morning, I went down to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order against both Madison and Brandon. I attached all the evidence I had collected: the threatening text messages, the pregnancy lies, documentation of the confrontation at my apartment, and Brandon's failed WWE audition attempt. Just for good measure, I included copies of all the canceled wedding contracts showing that I had been the one paying for everything throughout our relationship. I wasn't angry about the situation, and I wasn't even surprised by their behavior anymore. I was just completely done with the whole circus and wanted legal protection. About a week after the restraining order got approved and went into effect, Tyler sent me a link with a message that said, "Bro, you're going to absolutely love this." It was a GoFundMe page with the title "Pregnant, Abandoned at the Altar and Starting Over," complete with a broken heart emoji. The description read like it had been written as a script for a daytime soap opera, full of lies, manipulation, and vague threats about potential miscarriage if she didn't receive enough donations from strangers on the internet. She was asking for money to cover doctor bills, relocation costs, emotional trauma support, and help with rebuilding her life after a wedding disaster. She had even posted a photo of herself wearing a wedding dress, not the expensive one I had canceled, but some cheap knockoff she had apparently ordered from Amazon. The caption claimed it was the dress I'll never get to wear because my ex-fiancé abandoned me and our unborn child. Tyler had already made his contribution to the cause. He donated exactly $1 with the comment, "Thoughts and prayers." Buy a clue. The page got reported for fraud and taken down within 48 hours. Apparently, GoFundMe actually has policies against people using their platform to scam money from strangers with made-up sob stories. Who could have possibly known that? Brandon officially disappeared again just 3 days later. He deleted all his social media accounts, blocked Madison on everything, and vanished like he should have done the very first time she contacted him. Blake told me he overheard Madison screaming into her pillow one night, "He was my last option. I'll never find anyone else." The irony of that statement was absolutely beautiful to witness. As for me, I kept building my life back up piece by piece. I picked up extra shifts at work and got a raise to some really good money as my base salary. I bought myself some better tools that I had been wanting for months. A new DeWalt impact driver, a proper tool chest, and some quality safety gear that would make my job easier and safer. Eventually, I moved into a new place with my own garage and a view that didn't include a dumpster or any reminders of my past relationship. I started seeing someone new who had completely different energy from anything I had experienced before. Her name is Casey, and she's a mechanic who owns her own shop called Casey's Garage. She specializes in diesel engines, drives a 1997 F-250 that she maintains herself, and can spot bullshit from 4 counties away. She's exactly the kind of person I never knew I needed in my life. The first time I told Casey the entire Madison saga, she said, "Your ex sounds like the type of person who would cry in the mirror just to practice her victim face for social media." When I mentioned the canceled wedding and all the money I had lost, she just laughed and said, "Best investment you ever made was not making that mistake permanent." I knew I liked her for a very good reason. We had actually met at a job site where she was working on one of the contractor's trucks. She was elbow deep in an engine bay, completely covered in grease, and cursing at a stubborn bolt like it owed her money. There's something incredibly attractive about competence and independence. Then, like clockwork, I got another text from an unknown number. "You think replacing me makes you a man? You're pathetic and disgusting. You ruined my life, and I hope you're happy." There was no name attached, but we all knew exactly who it was. I took a screenshot, sent it to my lawyer to add to the restraining order file, hit the block button, and went on with my day. I didn't respond, I didn't react, and I honestly didn't care anymore. Some people only exist in your life to teach you valuable lessons about what not to tolerate in relationships. Madison was a 4-year masterclass in financial boundaries and red flag recognition. I learned every lesson she had to teach, earned my degree in spotting manipulation, and graduated with honors. Life is genuinely good when you know your worth as a person and refuse to sign legal documents that bind you to people who treat you like a walking ATM. The whole experience taught me that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is when someone shows you exactly who they really are. Madison did me the favor of revealing her true character before I made the mistake of legally binding myself to her for life. Sure, I lost some money on wedding deposits, but I gained something infinitely more valuable. My freedom, my self-respect, and a clear understanding of what I will and won't accept in a relationship. These days, I wake up in my own place, drive to a job I enjoy, work with equipment that challenges me, and come home to someone who contributes equally to our relationship. Casey and I split expenses fairly, we respect each other's independence, and we build each other up instead of one person draining the other. It's amazing how simple and peaceful life can be when you're with someone who sees you as a partner instead of a financial resource to be exploited. Looking back, I can honestly say that canceling that wedding was the single best financial decision I've ever made. Not just because of the money I saved, but because of the life I gained by walking away from someone who never valued what I brought to the relationship.